back to the Branded Podcast. I'm Tristan. I'm here with Justin, my co-host.
Hello, everybody.
And also Warren. What's your last name, Warren?
Warren Atwood.
Warren Atwood. So we're going to be talking with Warren and asking him what his journey to the cross is. And we've had a chance to talk a little bit. And it sounds like your adventure has been one that you can't really distinguish when you came to the Lord, but it's been a matter of maturing and growing in relationship for a long time. Would that be a good way to
You would describe it as
Yeah, well, as we've talked in the early part here before we went on camera, I was asked that question, and I had to think back about it, and I think my answer has probably been. The real turning point was with this church. I grew up as a Presbyterian. I understood religion from a sort of an understanding point of view.
An intellectual
point of view, if you want to use those words. But coming to a charismatic church that focused on personal relationships with the Lord. That probably was when I really went into the deep dive, if you will, to really understand, who Jesus was in my life, and developing a personal relationship with Him. Prior to that, there were many little instances that. Where God was interjecting Himself into his life, or into my life, and those were kind of nudges and wake-up calls, which sort of led me to this church.
Okay.
And
well, that's interesting because it can't be that long ago, because the church is only like eight or 9 years old.
I'm trying to remember how long I've been here.
I was trying to think too. I couldn't remember how long we've both been going.
A year or two after it first started.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I was here at the before the skating rink, for example.
Oh, you've been here longer than I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you being a seasoned saint who's had many years under your belt as far as relationship or understanding, church going, and could I say that you're like a lifelong believer that's now just had a new awakening?
That would be a way of describing it. Yes, when you talked to before this, you mentioned through this podcast you get to know people that you've been around for a long time. Well, I might use that as an analogy. Because I had known about God and known about Jesus and what He has done for my life, but just the deep dive, I guess, has happened really with an evangelical church that focuses on deep relationships and the Holy Spirit, and it's just something that. As being brought up and trained as, I won't say, let me just say that what I would consider a more denominational kind of church.
Well, you can say what you want. We won't tell anybody.
Well, I didn't want to say anything disparaging about other.
We appreciate that too.
Because the Lord, as I mentioned earlier, the Lord works with everybody where they are. Yeah. And, they can work with all sorts of denominations, but he found that I needed to be here.
Okay.
And so I don't know if you've ever read C.S. Lewis.
I'm a big fan of C.S. Lewis.
Okay, so am I. And he wrote a book called Mere Christianity.
Yep.
And the concept that he had was there is normal stuff that we all learn and believe in the Christian faith. And so you sort of go into an entryway, and you spend time in that entryway to try and figure out which one of the various doors you want to go in.
Right.
And I think what I discovered after a long period of time was the door I wanted to enter was this door. And I had been, sampling other doors before, and they taught me much of the fundamentals.
Yeah.
But when I walked through this particular door, this evangelical door, all of a sudden he said, "Hey, you're in the right place now." Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, you grew up in a home that was a Christian home, loving home, all those kind of good things, and the denomination you're in, which I grew up Baptist. You said you grew up Presbyterian, and there's nothing, that's great, and that's the foundation. And much like you, until I came to this church, which we're Assemblies of God, I learned there was so much more. There was more out there to be had if I was willing. And it sounds like your journey to a personal relationship with the Lord was kind of like mine in that way. You had a foundation, you knew what you believed, and then now you realize there's more out there. And
well, I think you've more eloquently said it than
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
That's basically what I was trying to say.
Okay. A picture came to mind when you're talking about your. The term waiting it's like when you're younger as a kid, and we talked a little bit before the podcast, you kind of were putting your toes in the water, and then as adult life came along, you might have waded up to your knees, but it seems like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you're doing cannonballs off the side of the pool now. You're fully involved in what God has got for you in a way that you hadn't in most of your adult life.
Well, I think that's true, and that's a very succinct way of putting it. Can I put a plug in for the book?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
If you haven't read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, it is a absolutely marvelous book, and I would encourage anybody at whatever level of their faith to take a look at that.
Yeah, and just on a personal note, growing up, I was raised in church also, and but my mom, she was very much. I couldn't get anything past her. She was very, very sharp, and we'd talk about things of faith and stuff. But hers was from a very legalistic point of view, until she read Mere Christianity. And she was just enthralled by this. If you read the books, they are very intellectual. They're thinking books. But it's from a perspective she hadn't had an opportunity to do. And from that point on, she's home with the Lord now. It's been 25, 30 years. But as an adult, in adulthood, I was able to talk to her in a way where we could wrestle with deeper things of the Lord. And it was foundational that she started off with Mere Christianity, and she became a big C.S. Lewis fan. So
yeah, cool, amazing. There are many amazing books, but he is one of them on my A list.
Yes.
And I've probably gone back and read the book probably 4 or 5 times.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we're talking about you kind of. When you came to this church and you came here, you started to explore that relationship with the Lord a whole lot more. And I can recall a testimony of yours where you stood up and just applauded the wonders of God, that you didn't know there was so much more, and that you appreciated the church and you appreciated the Lord for all the things He's done for you, and you were really pursuing, really pushing in on that relationship with Him. And so I've seen growth, and people have commented to me the same way, as far as when we're all here and we're doing what we're supposed to do, and we're really pressing in with trying to feel that Holy Spirit and pursue that relationship with Jesus, that it's just an amazing experience.
It is.
Yeah, in fact, that might be a good springboard. Now, you just recently did a 500-mile road trip in your El Camino. Is that what it was?
No, not exactly.
Was he talking about a Chevy? I thought he was talking about some hike or something. Okay. What did you do now? What's going on here? Tell us what your latest adventure was.
Well, here's another interesting way that the Lord leads you.
Okay.
Apparently, I've learned recently that I need. One of the things that the Lord is leading me in right now is a greater understanding of humility, and as I look back and I look at the footprints in the sand and see where it's come from, it's been an interesting journey. Back in first of all, what is the Camino de Santiago? It's a pilgrimage.
Now, where's it located?
It starts in southern France, and it climbs up over the Pyrenees, and then down into northern Spain, and then you walk west to the Atlantic Ocean, and you end up in a little town, not a little town, a big town called Santiago de Compostela, and this pilgrimage has been going on for probably 1,000 years, I guess. It started with, the Bible tells us that Paul went to Rome,
Right.
to evangelize on his way to Spain. The Bible doesn't tell us too much about James the Greater, but there are non-biblical accounts.
Or extra biblical, yeah.
Extra biblical accounts is a better way of saying it, of what the apostles did, and there are reports that James went to Spain, and in Greek, James is Iago, and so Saint Iago or Santiago is Saint James.
All right.
So he is reported to have gone to Spain to evangelize. And so this, in about the year 1000 or so, became a thing that Christians would do, take pilgrimages, like, Canterbury Tales and the rest of that, a Spanish version. So, but anyway, back to my journey. Back in 2019,
all right,
I saw a movie called The Way, and it was about a father and son who had experiences on the Camino de Santiago. It was a great movie.
Okay.
And throughout my life, I've always loved hiking and the outdoors and the rest of that. And I saw just the beauty of northern Spain. So I said, well, this is something I think I'd like to do.
And that was in 2019.
2019, and then COVID happened. So you couldn't do any of that. I did a little bit of the Appalachian Trail instead. But last year, I decided, well, this was the time that I was going to do it. So I did a little bit of training, and I went over there, spent the first week with my son, sort of a father and son time on the first 100 miles, and then did the rest of it by myself.
Wow.
But the first part with my son was a great father and son time, but the second, or the last 400 miles, when you get up in the morning and you've got nothing to do but walk 15 miles, you spend a lot of time thinking and just, about everything.
So you would walk 15 miles a day?
He already answered one of my questions, is how many miles a day did you cover? So
yeah, you covered about 15 miles a day for about 35 days. So,
were you in a group, or is it just you?
No, well, you never walk the Camino by yourself. Last year, there were about 500,000 people who walked this.
Oh.
So
There's always people around, but
there are always people around. But
you were walking by yourself, but there was people around.
And I found that often you make a lot of friendships as you walk along. You meet people, you learn about their stories. And I enjoyed that, but what was probably more significant for me was just the time I spent by myself. Because in that time, all of a sudden, I started speaking to the Lord, and the Lord started speaking to me.
Wow.
And we had just some amazing, amazing times. It included, we talked about miracles before.
Yeah.
It included a couple miracles. It included I had one of the questions that people ask about themselves when they are pilgrims on the Camino is, why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times they don't know. They say, well, it's just something I felt like I needed to do. And as I listened to people tell their stories, what I discovered is what we all know. There is, in many of us, there is, well, in all of us, there is a God-sized hole. And, it needs to be filled. And a lot of times people just don't realize what needs to go in that hole. So there are a lot of people there just struggling and learning and, trying to figure it out. And some figure it out on the Camino and some don't. But anyway, moving along.
You are very well versed at telling a story and telling how you were driving home and hit Bigfoot, and then you got home and it's what?
Did I talk about Bigfoot?
No.
The point being is that you run right past, and there was little more miracles. And I was talking to God. We want to hear about some of the conversations. We want to hear about some of those miracles because they spoke to you in a big way. They've changed who you are.
What he's saying is, do tell.
Do tell.
Do tell.
That's a Southern way. Yeah, do tell.
Do tell. Well, okay. Well, moving right along, I thought I was going because I love to walk in northern Spain. And then when I got there, I said, well, why am I doing this? And I said to myself, well, I'm almost 80 years old, and I've had a marvelously blessed life.
Wow.
I should be going to just give thanks to the Lord for, all of my blessings.
Yeah.
And so as I was by myself, I was thinking about all that, and then I started realizing, no, there's really more than that. I started thinking about St. Francis of Assisi, for example. Mm-hmm. He had done this pilgrimage back in 1213, I think. I started thinking about other folks and, their lives and their search and the Lord told them about the need for increased humility. And all of a sudden, I started seeing humility in all my thoughts and my discussions with the Lord. And I realized that, I do need to be very thankful, but I also realized that there's work to be done in terms of the areas of humility.
Yeah.
And as I walked along, as I would think about these things, the Lord would say, okay, well, here's this parable I want you to think about. And all of a sudden, I'd be thinking about the banquet where you want to take the least of the seats because you don't want to think more about this person than that person. And I started saying, okay, Lord, in what ways am I doing that? And what do I need to think about? And when have I done that? And what should I learn from all this? And so in numerous occasions, too many to, enumerate.
Right.
He was helping me think about what kind of a person he wants me to be. And we could go on and talk about that if you'd like, but you asked about miracles. I can tell you about that too.
That's where I was headed next.
What would you like
you
to
alluded to miracles. Did you see healings? Did you see, what did you see along the pilgrimage?
Okay. Two examples that happened. I left one town, and I left late. And so I knew I had to walk 15 miles, but I got a late start. I realized at some point I had to walk another, I think it was another 10 or 12 miles.
Wow.
And it was about 2:00 in the afternoon. and you start worrying about, well, is the sun going to go down, or what kind of problems am I going to have? And I was tired that day, just very tired, as you can get from walking 15 miles a day.
Yeah.
So anyway, then it started to rain. And we got a little snow also. I was walking by myself. I was out in the middle of nowhere. There were no towns around. And I was beginning to feel like I'm in trouble.
Now, did you have a backpack with survival stuff? Or, I mean, a
I was
sleeping
going to
bag?
get there if you didn't, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Quick.
Justin wants to be the one that asks you the question. Go ahead, Justin.
I was dying to ask. I didn't want to interrupt you
Go
like
ahead.
some
Go
people
ahead.
do. Anyway, quickly, we'll cover like gear. Is this like an Appalachian Trail kind of thing? Do you have a backpack? Are you going from town to town for shelter? Or are you camping in the wilderness? How does this work with this?
All good questions.
Yes.
Briefly, without taking too much time to discuss the mechanics, you carry usually a backpack, or you carry a backpack with maybe about 10% of your body weight. So I was carrying a backpack that was about 15, 20 pounds. You carry a sleeping bag because you stay in these auberges. And
old bear caves?
yeah, you stay in old bear caves. So
For anybody who doesn't know what that is, what is that?
an auberge is we've heard of hostels, right?
Yes.
Youth hostels. You can go
Which is a terrible name. It shouldn't be youth hostel, because it should be youth welcome or something like that. But go ahead.
You get there, and it's a dormitory kind of situation, and you will have maybe 40 bunk beds and 80 people sleeping in these beds, and you've got your sleeping bag, and you put it down, and that's where you stay for the evening. You're staying in town, so you don't have to carry your own food. You don't have to carry camping gear or any of that sort of stuff. So that's why you can keep it down to about, 15, 20 pounds. But you are carrying,
weight.
Some weight, yeah.
some weight along, and you carry that from town to town.
Okay.
Anyway, I was carrying that.
Yeah, you left late, and it was starting to rain.
And they were in a whiteout blizzard.
Well, it wasn't
Or
a
starting to
whiteout
snow,
blizzard,
yeah.
but it was clearly a torrential downpour.
Oh.
And I had another probably another 10, 12 miles to walk in this torrential downpour. Wow. And I had you carry a poncho. And so I had a poncho on, but the wind was blowing. And if anybody who's ever had a poncho on, that, if
Became a kite.
You become a sail.
you become a sail. So you're leaning into the wind with the rain blowing in your face, and you've got this backpack, and you feel tired and miserable. And at one point, I said, I don't think I can do this, Lord. You've got to take over. And, we've all heard these songs about car crashes and cars out of control, and Lord, take the wheel.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Jesus, take the wheel. Well, that was one of my Jesus, take the wheels moments. And so I really didn't know what I was going to do. I wasn't sure I could make it myself. I didn't have the equipment to lie down in one of the fields out there to get some sleep.
Was there trees and stuff?
No, this was on a plain in northern Spain.
All right.
So there really wasn't any way out, and there were no towns around, because normally there are towns about every 5 miles. But in this particular stretch, there were no towns. So I remember saying, okay, Lord, I don't know if I can do this or not. I really, really need your help. Jesus, take the wheel. And the next thing I remember was I was at the next town.
Really?
Now, what he had done for me was I just blanked out. And I just kept walking, but I really do not remember 12 miles. It's all of a sudden, I just looked up and I was there. And I was refreshed, and I could find a place to sleep. And I said, thank you, Lord.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a wow.
Yeah, that's a wow moment.
I mean, I've been behind the wheel driving a vehicle, and 10 miles go by, and you go, Oh, I don't remember that. And then
But
you
that's
think how
not
dangerous
uncomfortable.
It's not uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's just you're in the zone there.
But this was, I felt I was in real trouble. And, I wasn't sure I was going to make it. And so I said, okay.
I just wonder, we wonder about the mechanics. Our earthly minds can't wrap around concepts like that. But I wonder if he just gave you the peace and strength and you carried on unknowingly, or if he literally carried you. I mean, do you not wonder that kind of thing, Tristan?
Well, I mean, Philip, Philip was caught away. I hit the wrong button. Philip was caught away, and he found himself in a different town. You don't think that could have been something that happened?
Well, I don't know. I suspect it was not. I suspect what happened was the Lord just said, I'm going to help you. And he carried me.
Here you are.
I don't think he physically carried me, but he may have.
He just made it happen.
You did say that you were refreshed when you were there.
Yeah. So I really don't know. All I know was I was in trouble, and I didn't know whether I could do what I was about to do. And the next thing I knew, I had done it.
See, this is why you don't put God in a box. Because when you don't define what he can do and you ask, he'll do amazing, amazing things for you.
Mm-hmm. My other miracle, when you sleep with 80 of your closest friends,
New closest friends.
that you just met. Go ahead.
you get a chance to share all the flus and the colds and the rest of that. And, and I got one of those, and I went along for about probably about a week, maybe a week and a half, and the cold then went into bronchitis, and the bronchitis went into and
you were walking at the same time?
I'm walking at the same time. So, and one of the things I had done, because I wanted an experience, was I tried to stay at monasteries or...
oh, wow.
So I stayed at about 3 or 4 monasteries. And one of the monasteries I wanted to stay at was in the next town coming up. But I was really, really, I was sick.
Yeah.
So I went to a clinic. And I went to the clinic and went in, showed him all my papers and my passports, which you have to do when you're in a foreign country.
And they're probably not speaking English at this point.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
And so basically what they said was, well, we won't take credit cards and we won't take your cash. But if you know what your bank numbers are.
Oh, well, sure.
Well, let's just share that information.
So I didn't have them, and I probably wouldn't have given to him anyway.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I'll just soldier on. So I got up and I headed off for the next town. They said, maybe you can find some help 3 towns away. So, and that was about 50 miles. So I started off and I was feeling worse and worse and worse. And I finally got to this monastery, which again had a dorm with bunk beds and the rest of that. And I got in there. The only thing that was available at that time was the top bunk, which you never want to get when you're just showing up. But that's what you get when you show up late. So you're sleeping in a top bunk, getting up in the middle of the night, climbing down, all the rest of that. So when the night was over, I got up and I was very, very sick, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And in desperation, I said, well, I'm going to go talk to the priest. Okay. And I said, as far as I know, in Spain, you can't get medical attention, unless you have all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. So I went and told the priest that I was really in trouble. I needed some help. And I told him what had happened and how I couldn't get help and the rest of that. And he said, oh, well, there's a clinic just right around the corner.
Really?
And you just walk down there and they'll treat you for free. And, So while I was thinking that, I was sick and in a foreign country, and I assumed that was, the way things were going to happen, when I reached out for help, I was told that it was right there, and all I needed to do was ask.
All you had to do is ask.
And, that again brings to mind the Bible's, comment where all you need to do is ask. And the door will be opened.
Yeah.
Okay, pardon my basic elementary question, but do you speak Spanish?
You learn.
I started to say, if you didn't, you're going to learn on that kind of trip.
You learn, first of all, where the bathrooms are.
Yeah. The basic questions.
¿Dónde el baño? Por favor, rápido.
Well, actually, it's not baño. In Spain, it's aseo. So
Aseo?
And you learn aseo.
Aseo.
So you learn some of the basic things, and also you rely on Google Translate a lot.
Ah, okay. I was wondering
which was great until all the power went out in Spain.
Well, I was just going to ask about plugging it in. That's
Well, I don't know if you remember here in the States, but the power went out in Spain and Portugal and a bit of southern France. Huh. And so the whole country was without power. And so
for how long? I don't know.
It was about 6 hours, I guess. But it made the news. And so the only problem you really had with language was when the internet went out and you couldn't talk. But anyway, moving on.
Okay.
all right. Well,
I'm sure you've got questions, Tristan.
I do. Physically, apart from being ill, did you notice changes in your endurance from the time you started? Muscle fatigue or soreness by the time you ended? Had something transpired there that you go, it doesn't affect me the way it was before?
Yes, with anything like this, when you start walking, you ask, the question, can I really do this? 500 miles, for heaven's sakes, that's an awful long distance. But there is a saying that my son's second grade teacher once told her students, by the inch it's a cinch, by the yard it's hard. And so when you just start off and you say, well, maybe today I can just walk 10 miles, and you do that, then the next day it gets easier. And by the time, you've gone about a week, the 15 miles really isn't all that much, despite the fact it's uphill and downhill and the rest of that. And what you're really focused on is you're having this conversation with the Lord, and that's what you can't wait to get into the next day.
Yeah. You get somewhat addicted to that intimate time with the Lord. I would imagine that it helps propel you along when your thoughts are upon Him and His greatness, and you get to see the beauty and stuff. But I was also thinking, when you're talking about...
Well, can I interrupt you for just a second?
It's about time somebody interrupts Tristan.
Well, we're going to take a vote. We'll take a vote. Can he interrupt? No, go ahead. Sorry.
The sermon Sunday.
Yes.
Was about listening, you remember.
Yeah.
And Pastor Tim was talking about, one of the things we need to do is really listen.
Yeah.
And, my big takeaway from the Camino is when you have nothing to do but get up every morning and walk 15 miles, and you're doing it by yourself, you have an opportunity to listen like... when we're here and life happens, it often crowds into your ability to, really listen for what the Lord has to tell you. And one of the marvelous things about the Camino is you didn't have any of that.
You had nothing competing for your attention.
Nothing competing. And it's amazing how the Lord will speak to you when you really
focus on Him,
focus on listening.
Yeah.
And that was the lesson I had. And I got back to the States, and all of a sudden there was this problem I needed to solve, and this problem I needed to solve, and
did you want to go back after all the problems of home?
I don't want to go back because there's so many wonderful things in God's world that I want to explore.
Yeah.
But what I did want to do is I crave that sense of having nothing to do but listen, spend time with him.
On mission trips, oftentimes you get what I call a spiritual singularity,
Absolutely.
where I didn't bring my to-do list with me. I'm only there on the mission field to do what's right in front of me, whatever. I'm just willing and available. I don't know which way it's going, Lord. And there's something so refreshing about that singularity. Nothing competing for your attention, because you can't do anything about anything else. Mm-hmm. You have to focus in what's right in front of you.
Absolutely.
And so I appreciate that part in the trip. And also, when you talk about, we pray that God would increase our faith.
Yes.
The only way to increase our faith is to bring it, to stretch it past its current capacity.
Absolutely.
And if we want to grow in faith, we have to be pushed beyond what we can do now into the next level. So you probably experienced some of that too.
Well, going back to walking in the storm, in the winds and the rain. When you realize you just can't do it, and you say, "Lord, help me out," and all of a sudden, He did. So.
Yeah, you were basically lost in His goodness and kindness and covering, and He made sure you arrived at your destination. That's wonderful.
Refreshed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, refreshed.
Yeah, refreshed. So obviously, you got to this clinic, you got the medicine, you got to feeling better, and finished your journey on the.
I did, okay. And
what they say you had, just bronchitis.
Oh, I'm sure it was a cold that went into the lungs, that sort of stuff. But, if you don't have a doctor and you can't get anybody to give you, any antibiotics, you're just, you're back to the Old West, where when you got the croup, you either died or you didn't.
The good old immune system either worked or it didn't, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
All right. Well, as we are kind of wrapping this particular podcast up,
sure.
With what you've been through, excuse me, as what you've been through in your journey in life and where you are now, and you're seeing the next generation come up. You're seeing that the church has young ones and stuff, and you can see what's around and what they're going to have to compete with. What kind of sage wisdom would you have, for someone who's, you've put in more miles, literally, than most of us, and I anticipate God, speaks to you in a way that He hadn't been before, or you're listening in a way you hadn't before. I guess that would be a better way.
Yes, listening in a way that we must, but weren't before.
So if you're listening, what word do you think God has for the next generation coming up? Those that are just starting their journey, what kind of words would you have for them?
Anything inspirational or encouraging as far as that?
As Solomon once said, I don't think there are many new and unique, wise words. I think you just look around and you see where man is going by himself, and you realize we're on the wrong path. And the way to correct this is to wake up and listen to. He's the one who made us. He's the one who knows how we work. We need to listen to. Go back to look at the owner's manual, the Bible, and see how things are supposed to work. And that would be my advice. And of course, people will say, well, of course, that's standard. But it's not only standard, but it is vitally true.
And something you probably were reminded of on your solo journey is that you've got to enjoy the moment, because the moment's going, and the older we get, the more we recognize that it just passes by so quickly. Mm-hmm. So it's a great thing to have a goal set in front of you, But if you miss the joy in the journey, you've missed most of it. Because once you arrive, that's it. But it's that whole life is this whole journey of where you're going. So,
and I think as I've heard that Tim say that the church is the answer, but many people just don't realize it. So the extent to which we can go out and share our experience is the extent to which the world is going to change. And I thought about that a lot on my journey. Not only was I having this conversation, but the conversation often ended with, okay, Lord, what is the lesson here? How can I be one of your instruments to make a change?
Yeah.
And so one of the takeaways from the trip is not only that I need to listen more, but I need to ask, okay, well, am I doing what he wants me to do? And if I'm not, how do I further his kingdom?
Yeah. And I don't want to speak out of turn for Pastor Tim, but when you say something like the church is the answer, I know what you're saying, that for our fulfillment in
I guess what I should have said is God is the answer.
God is the answer, and he uses us as members of his body, as the bride of Christ, to reflect his love to a world that doesn't know him. So, and there's fulfillment in that. So, yeah, I can see how in the church, in exercising the gifts of godliness that we have, not just by ourselves, solo on our walk, but together as a big, a corporate body of believers gathered together, we can do even greater things. But ultimately, yeah, just like you said, it's God who does the willing and the work. He's the one that gives the desire, and he's also the one who gives the power to do the work. So. You
said it much more eloquently than I could have, but that's exactly what I was trying to say. And he gives us opportunities. I have not used my gifts the way I should in terms of sharing the good news. But he gives you opportunities if you look for them. And on the Camino, it was amazing the number of times when I would be talking to people that I had just met and listening to them.
Yeah.
And realizing that all of a sudden they needed to hear what I had to say. And all of a sudden I was sharing messages that I have never shared before to. Now,
maybe it's just me, but I've had those times when you're talking to someone and you don't plan on it, and all of a sudden you're sharing deeper things of the Lord, and you're actually a spectator watching yourself as the Lord's speaking through you, and you're going, "Oh, Lord, that's good. I've got to remember that." As you're sharing it with someone else, you're watching the Lord speak through you, and it's not an out-of-body experience, but just that God is willing to use your mouth to speak his words of truth to someone else. I don't know if you experienced something like that.
Yeah, well, yes, and again, very eloquent. Often when people think of sharing the gospel, they think of that disheveled-looking man with the sign that walks up and down, who's slightly crazy.
Well, that would have been you on the trip, wouldn't it? After those.
After about 4 weeks of 15 miles, you go over there with one change of clothes, and occasionally you get to wash them. So. But, we think of sharing the gospel in those kinds of, that for me is one of the first things that comes up. But on the Camino, all of a sudden, it was not, here's an opportunity I need to share. It's that they're talking about this, and we're in this conversation, and we are talking about how the world works. And, often I found that people would share with me their experiences of religion, And it was, they had a bad experience somewhere.
Yeah.
And so time and time again, I'd say, no, that's really not God. This is, and here is the examples of why it's not. And, so, but they were not proselytizing. They were just conversations that you had with a fellow human being that seemed to be important to them, and you wanted to share with them, and that was a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times we use the phrase sharing the good news. We use words like ministry, all these things, outreach. But I found so many times that as human beings, as people, we just want somebody to listen. We want to know that somebody is willing to spend time with us and hear our trials, our troubles, our concerns. And then you find yourself in a position, and like Tristan said, you don't even realize that it's you speaking. Lord has provided those words for you, and the next thing you know, you're trying to help this person, talk to them, and they just want that connection. And when you use the Lord and talk to them in that way, it's what people. So, and before we know, we're ministering to people, we're talking to people, we're sharing the good news, and we don't even realize that's what we're doing until it happens.
A perfect example of that is my son and I hadn't even started the Camino, but we were in the little French town. We had a rest day before we started up the mountain. The first day was a 5,000-foot climb.
Oh, my.
So, but anyway, we were looking at some of the sites in town, and we saw these 3 other people, and they had backpacks with them. So naturally you go over and you say, oh, you must be walking the Camino, and you talk. And in a very short period of time, maybe because you're strangers and you share things that you wouldn't normally share with people that you tend to be very open on the Camino. There was this one woman from Australia. And, I talked about the fact that there are people who are there that are searching for something, but they don't quite know what it is. She had just had a child a year ago. The child was born with some birth defects. The child died a year later.
Wow.
She was over on the Camino to walk 500 miles to try and do a life reset. And, so you're talking to people, you deeply dive into their lives and their story. And then all of a sudden you find yourself, hugging this person and sharing, like you said, your sympathy. And a lot of times God uses our deepest times to sort of shake us and wake us up. And those are the times when people are most receptive.
Yep.
To hearing his message. And so you get a chance to say, well, can I pray for you?
Exactly.
Or we will be thinking about you, or we hope to see you again, and we pray that you will use this trip to work your way through this. And they respond in amazing ways.
All right. Well, that being said, I want one final question. And it's kind of a basic, more earthly or worldly question. So speaking to those in the audience that are watching, I'm sure people are already Googling the Camino and all this kind of stuff, looking it up, and you might have inspired someone to make a pilgrimage. What would your advice be for those logistically, again, worldly speaking, who think, I would love to do a pilgrimage? Maybe not necessarily the Camino, but where do they start something like that? What was the first thing you did? Is there resources available? Is there a special place to get planning materials? What advice could you offer to folks who are considering something like this themselves?
Good question. I think going back to Tim's service, the first thing I would say is listen. I was listening as I learned about the Camino. And obviously that was leading up to, you need to learn more about humility. But I didn't realize it at the time. But I listened, and then I started investigating and learning, and I realized as time went on that there was a greater purpose to all this. And I think there's a greater purpose to all of our lives that the Lord wants to share with us. But it's fundamental. First you listen, and then the Bible says you never start a project that you can't finish.
Count the cost.
Count the cost.
There you go.
And that's all about planning, and then. When you go to execute, you realize, as I learned a number of times, that we can't always do these things by ourselves.
No.
We need the Lord's help, especially in difficult tasks when we're not sure it's within our capability.
Yeah.
But that's when He steps in.
And
That's great advice, Warren.
That's the call and response of faith.
Mm-hmm.
God is always calling out to us, trust me, come, come. And it's up to us to respond to that. So
I guess to sum that up, I think if we listen, God has experiences for us that He wants us to participate in, which will bring us closer to Him. And so we just need to be open to them. And if that's walking the Camino, that's great. If it's doing this kind of mission, that's great. If it's, but we need to listen.
Awesome.
Amen.
Yeah.
Justin, why don't you go ahead and wrap it up?
All right.
And
Do my thing.
Do your thing.
Okay.
Don't do my thing.
No, I'm
you.
going to do my thing.
You do you.
Okay. As always, thank you for joining us. Be sure to like, share, subscribe. And hey, get in the comments down below. If you're like me, you've got a ton of questions more to ask Warren. And if you put those questions down below, we'll try to get them to him and get some replies, and we'll put them back in the comments for you. He's obviously well-versed with the Camino, Chevy El Caminos, whatever. But
Yeah.
comment down below. All right. You want to tell him bye, Warren?
Well, I've enjoyed this this conversation, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I hope it's inspired somebody to maybe do the Camino or whatever goal that the Lord has in mind for them. Get out there and do it.
Awesome.
No doubt. Till next time, Lord bless.